When the judge officially ended my 8-year marriage, Daniel was looking at his phone. That was the part one remembered most clearly. Not the judge's voice. Not the papers in front of me. Not even the strange feeling of hearing my married name spoken in a courtroom for the last time. Daniel was looking at his phone. The marital status of the parties is terminated as of today, the judge said. The unresolved property issues will remain before the court. Daniel's shoulders relaxed. Just a little. If I hadn't spent 8 years watching him, I probably wouldn't have noticed. Then his phone lit up again. I was sitting close enough to see the message before he turned the screen face down. Mom, Emma loves the penthouse. The realtor is holding it for us until this afternoon. I looked away before Daniel noticed. So that was where his mother was. And Emma. 3 hours after our divorce became final, Daniel planned to go look at a $1.85 million penthouse with the woman who had been in his life for only a few months. I wasn't surprised. Not really. By then, surprise required hope. I had run out of that months ago. Daniel stood, slipped the court papers into his leather folder, and buttoned his jacket. When he passed my chair, he stopped. The Mission Valley condo is ready. I looked up. What condo? The old 2-bedroom. The one we used to rent to college students. Of course. I knew exactly which one he meant. The building was more than 40 years old. The underground garage leaked whenever San Diego got heavy rain. The kitchen counters were cracked. The air conditioner had broken 3 times the previous summer. Daniel himself had once said we should either renovate it or sell it because he was tired of dealing with tenant complaints. Now it was my fresh start. I had my assistant drop off the keys, he said. Most of the furniture is still there, so you can move in right away. I didn't answer. He seemed to think my silence meant I was offended. There's no mortgage on it, he added. It's worth more than $300,000. For one person, it's more than enough. More than enough. Daniel had always liked that phrase. 5 pairs of shoes were enough. My clothes were fine. The household budget was enough. After I left my career, I didn't need my own income because Daniel made enough for both of us. Now he had decided what was enough for me after divorce, too. A worn-out condo he no longer wanted. Meanwhile, he was about to spend almost $2 million on his new life. I picked up my bag. Got it. He hesitated. I could tell he had expected more. Maybe tears. Maybe anger. Maybe one final accusation. Instead, I stood. Claire. I stopped. I really don't want this to turn ugly. There was something almost sincere in his face. Our marriage is over. I think we should both move on. I looked at him for a moment. I agree. He gave me a small nod. Good. Then he left. The door closed behind him. My attorney, Nora Hayes, waited a few seconds before looking at me. He still has no idea. No. The temporary financial order should be entered this afternoon. What time? Hard to say. Maybe an hour. Maybe 2. I glanced at the clock. 11:09 a.m. Then I thought about the message on Daniel's phone. I hope it happens before 2. Nora frowned. What happens before 2? He's buying a new place this afternoon. How much? $1.85 million. Nora slowly took off her glasses. Today? Today. For the girlfriend? Technically, he's buying it as his new home. I paused. But she's already choosing rooms and furniture. Nora stared at me. Then she put her glasses back on. Well, what? That could get awkward. I laughed for the first time that morning. I didn't plan it. I know. But the timing is impressive. At 1:56 that afternoon, I was sitting in my best friend Jenny's kitchen when she sent me a photo. Margaret Reed, my former mother-in-law, stood in front of a wall of glass overlooking San Diego Bay. Emma stood beside her. 27 years old. An elementary school teacher. Brown hair, soft features, younger than she had looked in the few social media photos I'd seen. Behind them, sunlight glittered across the water. The penthouse had 4 bedrooms, a private elevator, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a view that stretched across the bay. Asking price, $1.85 million. Daniel planned to buy it as his post-divorce home. Margaret had apparently already decided Emma would move in eventually. Jenny sent another text. Your ex-mother-in-law just told Emma, pick what you like. Daniel wants this to feel like your home too. I stared at the photo. 8 years earlier, Margaret had taken me house hunting. She had held my arm exactly like that. She had smiled at the realtor and said, "Claire is family now. What belongs to Daniel belongs to her too." I was 25. I believed her. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Nora. Order entered. The judge's temporary financial restrictions were officially in place. They didn't freeze every dollar Daniel owned. They didn't shut down his company. They covered a group of disputed investment accounts, interests in several LLCs, and large transfers connected to properties that still had to be sorted out in the divorce. Daniel could still run his business. He could pay employees. He could pay normal expenses. What he could not do was move large amounts of disputed money into new investments, transfer it to someone else, or pull cash out of properties while we were still figuring out who legally owned what. I checked the time. 2:08 p.m. 6 minutes later, Jenny video called me. She was hiding near the back of the sales gallery. "Claire, what happened?" "They can't send the deposit." I sat up. She turned the camera. Daniel was standing beside a table covered in purchase paperwork. A transaction coordinator was speaking to him in a low voice. This wasn't a situation where someone swiped a credit card and got declined. Daniel had planned to wire a $250,000 earnest money deposit into escrow. The transfer couldn't be completed. "The funds are coming from an account listed under a new court restriction," the coordinator explained. Daniel's face hardened. "This is a normal real estate purchase." "I understand. That's my money." The coordinator stayed professional. "You'll need to have your attorney contact escrow and provide clarification before we can accept the transfer." Margaret finally realized something serious had happened. "What court restriction?" Daniel turned slightly. "Mom, give me a minute." "What do you mean, give you a minute?" "You said the divorce was over." Emma looked up. "What do you mean the divorce was over?" Everything went quiet. She looked straight at Daniel. "You told me you'd been divorced for 6 months. His jaw tightened. "Emma, let's talk outside." "Did you get divorced this morning?" "We've been separated for a long time." "That isn't what I asked." She stared at him. "Did your divorce become final this morning?" Daniel said nothing. His silence answered for him. Emma slowly put the floor plan back on the table. "You lied to me. It's not that simple." "Then start with the simple part." She picked up her purse. "When did you get divorced?" Margaret stepped in. "Emma, does the exact date really matter right now?" Emma turned to her. "It matters to me." Then she looked back at Daniel. "I'm leaving. I'll drive you." "No." She stopped near the door. "Figure out what's going on with your divorce and your money first." Then she added, quietly but clearly, "When you understand your own life, maybe then you can talk to someone else about a future." She walked out. Jenny pulled the camera back toward herself. "I finally understand the phrase public disaster." I didn't answer. Because the failed deposit was the smallest part of Daniel's problem. The real question was why the court had decided that money he kept calling his was still disputed at all. My phone rang less than 10 minutes later. "Daniel." I answered. "What did you do?" "No hello. No Claire. Just that. Good afternoon. Why is my investment account restricted?" "You should call your attorney." "Claire." His voice dropped. "This came from you." Nora requested it after the forensic accountant found a risk that disputed assets were being moved. "Those are business assets." "Then prove that." "Reed Property Holdings is my company." "No one said you didn't start it." "Then why are you touching my company?" There it was. My company. I leaned back in my chair. "Why did your financial disclosure list only 4 jointly owned investment properties?" "Because the others aren't marital assets." "What about the other 16? They're held by separate companies." "Were those companies funded with money earned during our marriage?" "The business structure is more complicated than you understand." "Then let the accountants sort it out." He exhaled sharply. "I didn't hide anything. I separated business assets from personal assets." That sentence told me almost everything. Daniel didn't even think of what he had done as hiding. In his mind, he built the company. He negotiated the purchases. He dealt with lenders. Therefore, the properties belonged to him. What I had done along the way barely counted. "Good," I said. "If everything is as clear as you say, This should be easy to prove. He went quiet. Then he asked, "How much do you want?" "I don't know." "What does that mean?" "It means I don't know the full value of what we own yet." "You listed 4 properties. 2 years ago, I saw 17 on the internal asset report." I paused. "You bought 3 more after that. So I'd like to know where those assets went." "Some are company-owned." "Fine. Some were mine before we got married. Then there will be purchase records. Some belong to my mother. Then she'll have proof she funded them." He was silent again. "Do we really have to do this?" "Yes." This time, I answered immediately. "I need to know what's real." I hung up. Only then did I notice my hand shaking. Jenny saw it too. She didn't tell me to calm down. She just poured me a glass of water and set it in front of me. I drank half of it. A few minutes later, the shaking stopped. 6 months earlier, Daniel had asked for a divorce. He did it over dinner. He had even opened a bottle of red wine first. "I think we should end this." I looked at him. "You've already decided?" "I've been thinking about it for a long time." I later learned that he had already met Emma by then. But Emma wasn't the thing that finally broke something inside me. Daniel's attitude did. I asked him, "What happens with the property?" "We'll be fair." He said it easily. "I'm not going to leave you with nothing." At the time, that sentence actually made me feel better. That was how far I had drifted. I thought being promised something was proof of fairness. I told Nora, "If he's reasonable, I don't want to fight over every little thing." Then Daniel's first financial disclosure arrived. For jointly owned investment properties. I read the addresses twice. "Where are the others?" Nora looked up. "There are more. At least a dozen more." "You're sure?" "Yes." I was sure because I had prepared the original loan paperwork for several of them myself. In the second year of our marriage, Daniel wanted to buy a 4-unit rental building. It was his first serious attempt to grow beyond a few small properties. The bank rejected his loan application. That night, he dropped the rejection letter on the kitchen counter. "They don't understand the deal." I picked it up. "Your cash flow model is wrong." He frowned. "No, it isn't. You calculated all 4 units as rented 12 months a year. They're almost always full. Banks don't underwrite almost." I opened my laptop. "You also didn't reserve enough for repairs, and your net operating income is off." He stared at me. "You got all that from one page?" "I'm a CPA, Daniel." That night, I worked until after 2 in the morning. By breakfast, I had rebuilt the model. We spent 3 days fixing the application. Vacancy rate, maintenance reserves, operating expenses, debt coverage. The second time we went to the bank, I went with him. The loan was approved. When we walked into the parking lot, Daniel grabbed me around the waist and spun me once. "I didn't marry a CPA." He laughed. "I married my CFO." Years later, that building was worth almost 3 times what we paid for it. It also helped Daniel qualify for the next property. And the next. Back then, my financial skills were part of our success. By the end of our marriage, the story had changed. I was simply a woman who hadn't had a real job in years. The change happened slowly. At first, Daniel asked me about everything. "What do you think of this deal? Does this financing look bad? Can we carry this mortgage if the units sit empty for 2 months?" I had a company email. I helped with budgets. I reviewed loan documents. I organized financial reports. Then Margaret had hip surgery. At almost the same time, Daniel's company began expanding. He traveled constantly. One night he said, "Maybe you should leave your job for a while." I had just moved into a more senior role at my accounting firm. "Leave now. We don't need your salary anymore. What happens later? If you want to go back, you go back." He took my hand. "We're a family. We don't have to calculate every contribution." So I resigned. For the first 2 years, I still helped with the business. I just didn't have a title anymore. Or a paycheck. Eventually, Daniel hired a full-time finance director. I asked him once, "Do you think I should go back to work?" He shrugged. "Things are good the way they are." A year later, at a company event, I stood beside him while he introduced the new finance director to a group of investors. Finally, Daniel joked, "I have a professional handling the numbers." I held a glass of champagne. He didn't even notice what he had said. Later, I asked him about an investment I didn't recognize. He barely looked up from his phone. The structure's complicated now. What does that mean? You haven't been involved in years. It's hard to explain. At the beginning, you're my CFO. Later, you don't need to work. I'll take care of us. Then, you don't really understand the business anymore. And finally, during divorce, you haven't had income in years. 2 weeks into the financial review, the forensic accountant, Sam Patel, spread a chart across the conference table. I found the properties you remembered. 16 properties missing from Daniel's original list were held through 4 different LLCs. The company names looked complicated. Sam made them simple. Properties at the bottom. Companies in the middle. People who controlled those companies at the top. 2 LLCs had changed ownership 2 years earlier. A familiar name had been added. Margaret Reed. Daniel's mother. Did she actually put money in? I asked. On paper, yes. Sam slid over a bank statement. One of Daniel's companies transferred $180,000 into Margaret's account. 5 days later, the same amount came back. Only the label had changed. Margaret Reed, capital contribution. Can we say he transferred ownership to her? Not yet. Sam tapped the page. But we can say the source of the money deserves a closer look. You didn't need to understand accounting to see the problem. The money left one pocket, passed through Margaret, then came back wearing a different name. That discovery was also why Margaret showed up at Jenny's house the next day. Daniel's attorney had apparently explained that because Margaret's name appeared in 2 disputed LLCs, Sam would request records showing where her investment money had come from. Suddenly, this wasn't just her son's divorce. Her own accounts were part of the paper trail. Jenny opened the door. Margaret walked in without sitting down. Withdraw the restrictions. I can't. You requested them. They're court orders now. She placed her handbag on the table. The Mission Valley condo goes to you. I waited. Plus $200,000. She looked at me as though she had solved everything. That's fair. Why? She frowned. Why what? Why is that fair? You're one person. How much money do you need? I almost laughed. Daniel is buying a $1.85 million home. Does he need that much? Her face changed. That's his money. Finally. There it was. Not enough. Not fair. Not practical. His money. Margaret, after your surgery, who drove you to physical therapy? She didn't answer. When your husband died, who organized the insurance paperwork, the property records, and the estate files? That's what family does. Exactly. I nodded. I thought so too. I never sent you an invoice for my time. But now you're telling me that because I didn't receive a salary during those years, I made no financial contribution to the life Daniel and I built. She tightened her mouth. Taking care of family doesn't make you the owner of a real estate company. I never said it did. I stood. That's why lawyers and accountants are going through the records. If something belongs to Daniel, I won't take it. If something belongs to me, I'm not giving it up because you think I've already been given enough. Margaret picked up her purse. You're going to destroy his company. No. I opened the door for her. If the records are clean, the company will survive just fine. And if they aren't, I didn't create the problem. She left without another word. The second major discovery didn't look like a victory at first. A month later, Daniel's attorney produced 3 family loan agreements. The explanation was simple. Several properties had been purchased with money Margaret had personally loaned Daniel. If that was true, some of those assets could be treated differently in the divorce. The agreements totaled more than $600,000. They had dates, signatures, interest terms. They looked legitimate. I read all 3. Then I looked at Nora. What if they're real? Then we treat them as real. So some of those properties may have less community interest than we thought. Correct. For the first time since the investigation began, I felt truly uncertain. I had spent months searching for assets Daniel hadn't fully disclosed. But that didn't mean everything I remembered automatically belonged to both of us. Some properties really had been purchased before our marriage. Some money might genuinely belong to Margaret. The next morning, I told Nora, if they can prove something is Daniel's separate property, don't fight over it. She watched me. You're sure? Yes. I want what belongs to me. 3 days later, Sam called. You should come in. He placed one of the loan agreements in front of me. For $100,000. Loan date is May 14th, he said. I nodded. Margaret's bank balance on May 13th was $68,000. I looked up. So, where did the $400,000 come from? Sam turned the page. On the morning of May 13th, $400,000 left an investment account jointly owned by Daniel and me. That same day, it entered Margaret's account. The next day, Margaret loaned exactly $400,000 to Daniel's company. Same amount. Less than 24 hours apart. I stared at the statements. The day before, I had honestly considered the possibility that the money was hers. It wasn't. At least not originally. Sam closed the file. When you put transactions in chronological order, complicated things get simple very quickly. He was right. The money left our account on Monday. Passed through Margaret. Came back on Tuesday. Then a document called it a family loan. That was the entire trick. The third discovery changed the case. Sam called me one afternoon. We found a refinance application. For which property? One of the rentals. Current value is around $900,000. Daniel had applied for a cash-out refinance. If it closed, he could pull almost $400,000 in cash out of the property. The refinance itself wasn't the biggest issue. The timing was. The application had been submitted after our divorce case was already underway. Worse, Daniel had signed a statement saying the property was solely held through his investment company and had no undisclosed marital ownership dispute. But when the property was purchased 6 years earlier, the down payment came from a joint account. My financial information had even been included in the original financing file. I looked at Daniel's signature. He signed this after we filed for divorce. Yes. And after both sides were told not to move major assets. Yes. If the refinance had closed, he would have taken almost $400,000 in cash. Yes. There was no complicated business explanation for that. He knew we were dividing property. He knew the asset was disputed. And he was still trying to pull money out of it. 3 days later, Nora asked the court for targeted financial restrictions. That was the order that happened to take effect the afternoon Daniel tried to fund the penthouse escrow. There was no dramatic secret freeze. No trick. The court simply said, until the property dispute is resolved, you cannot move large amounts of money out of accounts and assets that are still being divided. Daniel's new home happened to run directly into that restriction. Emma emailed me during the 3rd week. Her message was short. She apologized first. Then she asked one question. Could I have been unknowingly pulled into your property dispute? That was why she contacted me. After the penthouse disaster, Daniel kept telling her the same story. I couldn't accept the divorce. I was using my accounting background to make ordinary business structures look suspicious. Emma had started wondering whether she had somehow been involved in a transaction she didn't understand. We met at a coffee shop. The first thing she asked was, do I need a lawyer? I don't know. She looked alarmed. But I haven't seen anything suggesting you were involved in his business or asset transfers. Her shoulders relaxed. I was just there to see the condo. I know. She looked down at her coffee. He told me you'd been divorced for 6 months. We had been separated. So, he didn't completely lie? He gave you the part of the truth that was useful to him. She gave a humorless laugh. That sounds like Daniel. She told me he had been trying to explain everything since the sales office incident. According to him, the LLCs were normal. The money was his. The property dispute was me using numbers to punish him. He keeps saying you're trying to take his company. I asked, what do you think? I don't know enough to know. That's fair. She hesitated. Do you think he knows he's lying? I thought about it. Not always. What does that mean? I think Daniel genuinely believes he earned most of it. He handled the deals. He negotiated with sellers. He became the public face of the company. My work was something his wife did to help. And when I left my career, that was my choice. So in his mind, he isn't stealing anything. He thinks he's protecting what he earned. Emma looked at me for a long time. That's worse. Why? Because if someone knows they're lying, they know there's a line somewhere. She wrapped both hands around her coffee. If he honestly thinks he's always been fair, how would you ever convince him he hasn't? I didn't answer, because she had understood something in 15 minutes that I had spent years trying to name. Emma ended her relationship with Daniel. We didn't become friends. We didn't team up against him. We exchanged a few messages after that, then moved on with our own lives. That was enough. By the 4th month, Sam found another issue. Rental income. The numbers Daniel submitted during the divorce did not fully match earlier tax filings. The differences were large enough that they needed review. Sam asked, "When did you stop handling company accounting?" I gave him the year. And after that? I was completely out. He nodded. Then the later discrepancies aren't part of your work. My first instinct was still to ask, is it serious? Possibly. What happens if there's a tax problem? That's between Daniel, his current accountant, and the tax authorities. I almost asked another question, then stopped. Okay, that was all. Okay. For years, every problem in Daniel's life became my problem. Missing document? I found it. Cash flow problem? I rebuilt the budget. Daniel was anxious? I stayed up with him. Margaret was worried? I reassured her. This time, I closed the file. Whatever happened next was Daniel's responsibility, not mine. A week before mediation, Nora gave me the latest property analysis. The result was lower than I had once imagined. Some properties were clearly Daniel's separate property from before the marriage. Margaret could prove that part of the investment money really had come from her. Several properties still carried large mortgages. I read the report carefully. These are definitely his? Based on the records we have, yes. Then don't fight over them. Nora looked up. You're sure? Yes. I had spent months demanding that the truth matter. That had to apply even when the truth didn't benefit me. I wanted my share. I didn't need his. Mediation lasted almost 7 hours. No one talked about heartbreak. No one asked who had suffered more. No one cared who had been the better spouse. There were spreadsheets, bank statements, property valuations, loan balances, company ownership records. The final accounting showed that more than $3 million in asset interests, account funds, and related transactions had either been missing from Daniel's original disclosure or classified in ways that required further review. That didn't mean $3 million belonged to me. After subtracting mortgages, confirmed premarital property, legitimate family investment, and other separate interests, we reached a settlement. I would receive $2.4 million in cash, 2 rental properties with no mortgage, my legal share of the retirement accounts, and a portion of investment assets. In exchange, I would release claims against the remaining interests in Daniel's premarital business entities. When the mediator left the room to give us time to review the agreement, Daniel said, "I want to talk to Claire alone." Nora looked at me. I nodded. We moved into a smaller conference room next door. Daniel stood near the window. He didn't say anything at first. Then, $2.4 million. I waited. And 2 properties. Yes. You really think you should get that much? There it was. After 5 months. After all the records. After all the tracing. He was still asking why I deserved it. I sat down. You want an answer? Yes. Okay. I looked at him. When your first commercial loan was rejected, who rebuilt the financial model? He frowned. You helped. Helped. What do you want me to call it? Work. You weren't an employee. Because eventually you asked me to leave my job. I didn't force you to quit. There was the sentence I knew was coming. You're right. He looked almost relieved. I never locked the front door and stopped you from going to work. Exactly. So don't act like I ruined your career. Do you remember why I left? He didn't answer. Your mother had just had surgery. You were traveling half the month. Everything at home needed someone. I suggested hiring help. My mother didn't like strangers in the house. And you told me to be patient because she was recovering. He crossed his arms. You could have gone back later. I tried. When? When I asked about part-time work. He looked away. You told me my salary wasn't worth turning the house upside down. I was trying to make our life easier. I know. Then why are you turning that into some sacrifice I demanded from you? Because later, You used the fact that I had no income as proof that I hadn't contributed. He finally looked at me again. I paid for everything. Yes, you never went without. That is not the same thing as saying everything belongs to you. I was the one out there doing the deals. I know. I negotiated the properties. I know. I built the company. Yes. I nodded. And while you were doing all of that, who handled everything you didn't want to handle? He didn't answer. When you needed a financial model, I was a professional. When you needed someone to take care of your mother, I was family. When you needed someone to keep the household running while you traveled, I was your wife. Then the marriage ended. And suddenly I became one thing. A woman with no income. Daniel looked away. You're making it sound like I thought you were useless. I don't think you thought I was useless. He looked back. I think you got used to my work being free. His face tightened. I never thought that. Then why do you keep describing the settlement as me taking your money? Silence. Have you ever considered, I asked, that some of it was mine before the settlement? He didn't answer. Finally, he said, I wasn't going to leave you with nothing. You offered me a condo you didn't want. It was paid off. And there it is. What? You were still deciding what I should receive. 300,000 should have been enough. 500,000 would have been generous. 1 million would have been extremely generous. I leaned back. But it was always your decision. His face changed slightly. That was the real problem. So, what did you want? For you to believe it was ours. He stared at me. I continued. Not every property. Not every dollar. I know you had assets before me. I know some of what you built came directly from your work. But you never really believed my time had the same value as yours. He lowered his eyes. After a while, he asked, if I had handled things differently. I knew where he was going. No Emma. No missing disclosure. No questionable transfers. Would we still be married? I answered before he finished. If you had believed from the beginning that my time mattered as much as yours. I paused. We might never have gotten divorced. That was the end of the conversation. No shouting. No apology. No dramatic breakdown. An hour later, we signed the settlement. The tax issues continued after our divorce was fully resolved. At one point, Daniel's attorney contacted Nora and asked whether I would sign a statement saying some old rental reporting systems had originally been created while I was still involved in the accounting. The implication was obvious. If older systems were partly mine, maybe some later mistakes could be blamed on them. I read the statement. Then I asked Nora, is this accurate? Not completely. I handed it back. Then I'm not signing it. That may make his tax situation harder. I understand. And I did. Later, I heard Daniel paid back taxes and penalties. He sold several properties. The company became smaller. Margaret sold a vacation home. That was all I knew. I didn't ask for more. One day, Jenny said, you're seriously not curious about how he's doing? I thought about it. Not really. She stared at me. That may be the healthiest thing you've ever said. I laughed. Maybe it was. I no longer needed Daniel to be miserable in order to believe leaving him had been right. I did not buy the $1.85 million penthouse. Jenny was personally offended. Why not? Because I don't like it. You stared at the photos for 10 minutes. I was staring at them. That's even more reason to buy it. She pointed at me. Move in. Make Margaret drive past it every week. I laughed. If I spend almost $2 million just to make my ex-husband uncomfortable, I'm still building my life around him. Jenny opened her mouth. Then closed it. Okay. I hate that you're right. I bought a townhouse instead. Less than half the price. Not huge. Not impressive. But it had a south-facing backyard. The realtor kept talking about the remodeled kitchen and the primary suite. I barely heard her. I stood in the yard for 10 minutes. There was sunlight. Enough for flowers. So I bought it. During the first week, I brought home roses, hydrangeas, lavender, jasmine, a small lemon tree, white orchids. In the second year of our marriage, I had planted a rose bush in a container on our balcony. Margaret said it attracted bugs. One afternoon, while I was out, she threw it away. I was upset. Daniel didn't understand why. It's one plant, he said. Just buy another one. We never did. Now no one asked me why I needed so many flowers. When I left my career, I hadn't completely given up my CPA license. I had kept it in inactive status. Every renewal period, I would stare at the form and think, maybe one day. I never knew what one day meant. 8 months after the divorce, I completed the continuing education I needed and moved my license back to active status. Then I started applying for jobs. The first firm did not hire me. The interviewer was kind. Your foundation is strong. Thank you. But you've been away from the profession for almost 8 years. I know. Forensic accounting has changed a lot. Electronic records, data tools, financial discovery software. He gave me an apologetic smile. We're looking for someone with more recent experience. I told him I understood. Then I sat in my car for 20 minutes before starting the engine. That was one of the few moments after the divorce when I truly doubted myself. 8 years was 8 years. Wanting to come back did not erase the gap. That night, I registered for 2 updated forensic accounting courses. I learned new software. I reviewed current case studies. I practiced tracing transactions through digital records. A month later, I interviewed again. The partner looked at my resume. 8-year career gap. Yes. Does that worry you? Yes. That answer surprised him. So I've been fixing it. I told him about the courses. Then I told him about the divorce case. Over the previous several months, I had worked alongside attorneys and forensic accountants while tracing money through 4 LLCs, more than a dozen disputed properties, joint accounts, family transfers, and a refinance application. He leaned forward. What exactly did you do? Reviewed bank statements. Tracked where money left and where it returned. Matched down payments to source accounts. Compared old property schedules with current ownership records. Reconstructed the timing around the refinance. I didn't make it sound more complicated than it was. Because eventually, most financial investigations came down to a very basic question. Someone says the money belongs to them. You ask, where did it come from? The partner closed my resume. Can you start next Monday? For a second, I thought I had misheard him. Then I smiled. Yes. On my first day back in an office, I opened a balance sheet on my computer. Then a bank statement. Then a cash flow report. I had to blink a few times. The skills were still there. Some were rusty. Some needed updating. But they were mine. They had always been mine. For years, I had used them for everyone except myself. A little over a year later, I started handling smaller marital asset investigations. One afternoon, a woman sat across from me in the conference room. She kept twisting the cuff of her sleeve. My husband handles all the money, she said. I don't know what we actually own. I nodded. And I haven't worked in years. She looked embarrassed. So maybe I don't really have a right to ask for much. For a second, I saw myself. Not because our marriages were identical, but because I knew that voice. The voice of someone who had been told for so long that financial information belonged to someone else that she had started to believe she didn't even deserve to ask questions. I pushed a blank asset worksheet across the table. Don't worry about what you're entitled to yet. She looked up. Then what do I do? Start with facts. What accounts exist? What properties? Whose names are on the companies? How much debt is there? Where did the money come from? I tapped the worksheet. We find those things first. Your attorney can decide the legal part. She slowly nodded. That afternoon, I finally understood why I wanted to stay in the field. It wasn't about helping people punish their spouses. It was about helping someone see the full picture before anyone convinced them they had no value in it. That same year, I rented a tiny corner storefront near my office. 600 square feet. White walls. A full glass front. A jacaranda tree outside. I didn't quit accounting. The store didn't need to support me. It only opened on weekends. I wanted a flower studio. That was the whole reason. No business empire. No grand plan. I liked flowers. I named it Second Bloom. Jenny saw the sign and immediately made a face. That's a little dramatic. Then don't come. She arrived first on opening day with a flower arrangement so large it almost blocked the door. More than a year later, on a Saturday evening, I was trimming white roses when the bell above the door rang. I looked up. Daniel stood there. I hadn't seen him in a long time. He didn't look destroyed. He wasn't broke and desperate. He hadn't aged 20 years. He just looked ordinary. Blue shirt. Jeans. A little gray near his temples. Less of that old confidence that used to make him enter every room as if everyone there had been waiting for him. Hi. Hi. He looked around. I saw Jenny post pictures of the shop. That explained how he found it. It looks good. Thanks. He walked toward a bucket of sunflowers. Can you make me a bouquet? Who's it for? My niece. She graduates from college today. What is she like? Yellow. I chose sunflowers. Chamomile. A little greenery. Daniel stood quietly on the other side of the counter. When I was almost done, he said, "My mother lives in Arizona now. With my aunt." I kept wrapping the flowers. How is she? She's okay. He hesitated. She asked me to tell you she's sorry. I tied the ribbon. Okay. He looked surprised. That's it. I looked up. What else should I say? He gave a small laugh. Fair enough. I handed him the bouquet. He paid. But he didn't leave immediately. Claire. Yeah. Sometimes I still think. I shook my head. Don't. He looked at me. You know what I was going to say? Probably. If things had been different. It doesn't matter anymore. He looked down at the flowers. Things happened. I said. We both have lives now. After a moment, he nodded. You're right. He reached the door. Then stopped. Claire. I looked up. Do you still hate me? I actually had to think about it. No. Why? I looked at him. Because you're not worth taking up that much space in my life anymore. Daniel said nothing. After a few seconds, he nodded. Then he opened the door and left. The bell rang softly behind him. I didn't walk to the window. I didn't check what car he drove. I didn't wonder where he lived. I went back to the roses. Less than 2 minutes later, the bell rang again. A woman around 30 walked in carrying a work bag. Are you still open? Yes. She looked around. I want to buy something. For someone. For me. I smiled. Then you should choose carefully. She walked slowly along the display. Eventually, she stopped in front of a bundle of pink tulips. The buds were still mostly closed. These are pretty. They are. But they haven't opened yet. Not completely. She pointed toward another bunch. Should I get the ones that are already open instead? I picked up the closed tulips. These are good. She hesitated. They don't look as pretty right now. I carried them to the counter and laid them across the wrapping paper. Outside, the evening light came through the glass. The shadow of the jacaranda tree moved across the floor. I trimmed the stems. It's okay. I wrapped the flowers. In a few days, I tied the ribbon around them. They'll open beautifully.